Q&A section. So the intention behind EOP Spotlight is a series to connect and empower our current EOP SSS students and other underrepresented students at Marquette by meeting an EOP SSS alum, hearing about their time as a Marquette students, challenges they faced, and leadership opportunities they engaged in. EOP SSS alums will also share their experiences post-grad, speaking on their professional careers and leadership opportunities, as well as providing advice to students. So before we get started, I did want to do a little bit of an icebreaker. So if Dia could drop it in the chat, please. And once Dia drops that in the chat, please click on it. And there's a question that says, what does community mean to you? And if you could put a word or two of what community means to you, I'll share my screen and we can see each other's answers. All right, so Dia put it in the chat.
Did the link work?
It should.
Okay.
So what does community mean to you? So drop in your thoughts and then we'll see what comes up. So I see support. What else? What else does community mean to you? There are no wrong answers. So people, solidarity, consciousness, safe, family, collection, home, making, I think making things happen, united, supportive, safe. That's great. United. Great. All right. So let's go to the next question. What does it mean to be a community advocate? Try and keep it to a couple words. I know that's hard, but if you put a sentence, it kind of breaks it up. So what does it mean to be a community advocate? What do y'all think? United, support again. Maybe united support, loving your neighbor. That's beautiful. What else? Speaking up. Definitely. Empower. Give back. Coming together. That's great. Anything else? Caring. Leader. Great. Anything else? All right. Thanks everyone for participating. Once you hear Dora and her talk today, you'll realize why I asked you those questions, because she is very much a community advocate, and community is very deeply important to her. And I know that just having the privilege to go to school with her during undergrad at Marquette. So I'm going to share my screen again and present the slide and give you our formal introduction to our speaker. All right. So in honor of Women's History Month, we have invited EOP SSS alumna Dora Drake to speak and share her story at the second EOP Spotlight Series, Dora Drake was born and raised in Milwaukee, graduating from Eastbrook Academy High School. She was accepted into Educational Opportunity Program Student Support Services at Marquette University and graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Social Welfare and Justice. During her time at Marquette, the death of Michael Brown led Dora into student activism, which led her to serve as a social worker within the criminal justice system for 3 years. Dora's dedication to advocating for underserved communities allowed her to establish racial bias training for an agency statewide, serve as a campaign manager for a school board race, and currently as the Wisconsin State Representative for the 11th Assembly District, her home community. So without further ado, I will pass the virtual mic to Dora. Thank you so much for being with us today.
No, thank you, Jadalyn, and thank you to EOP for reaching out. This is truly, anytime I have any time to come back and speak to the communities that have helped me get to where I come from, it reminds me why I'm doing this. So first off, thank you all for joining. Again, in honor Women's History Month, it definitely is humbling and it's an honor to speak. But a lot of the responses that all you shared moments ago about what does it mean to be a community advocate, quite honestly started getting me a little emotional in this line of work. You always have to be so meticulous about what's the best way to not only advocate for your community, but how to do it and make sure that things get done. So my time at Marquette, I was a first-generation student. I served a little bit on Trio Day, but I was the student that really struggled opening up to get help. I had this mindset that I had to figure out on my own. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I have a large family, so I'm the oldest sibling. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to not only do good, but because I knew there were others looking up to me, letting know that they can do this too. And at EOP, what's great is that you come into Marquette sort of with a support system that you can create even before you officially start school. And so for me, that definitely served as a cushion. But when we talk about community and advocacy, a lot of my time at not only EOP, but just at Marquette was truly one, seeing how I'm going to be viewed in a society, right? So I was more aware of who I was as a Black individual, as a Black woman, and just seeing how other groups of people are seen and treated differently because of that. And I remember there was one semester where I took Intro to Politics, Media, Social Welfare and Justice, and Journalism, and like all the dots connected, right? So I come home every day from school, saying, this is absolutely wrong. I can't believe they're doing this to us, and just people that really don't deserve to be treated less than equal. And so it was the combination of that leading up to what happened in Ferguson. And, we're aware, right, of things that happen in our own community. We see the injustices that happen, but to have it seen so blatant that summer, and then being so aware of who I was in that space at Marquette, led me to just find a way to help. I don't know what that looked like at the moment, but I knew I needed to do something, and that I had to be part of making life better, not just for me, but for those that will be coming after me. And so I got involved with other students that were passionate about activism on campus and just advocating for the issues that Black students and students of color faced on campus. So in that, I found my voice, honestly, not only speaking for others, but embracing who I was, flaws and all, my background, where I come from, and knowing that those weren't necessarily barriers, but they actually helped me to where I am today. And so, when we talk about community and support, and, you guys are all students, and with that, a lot of your power is students, because that's probably the one of the few times in life where, people are concerned about your input because you are paying into a university or college for your education. So in that space, being able to boldly speak about the issues that concern you and others does mean you have to support one another. There were times where there was nights I was so overwhelmed, whether it's from schoolwork, whether it's stuff at home, or just what's happening on campus. I knew I couldn't do it alone, so it took the support of my other fellow students I went to school with, whether it's an EOP or other people I befriended in classes, saying that I need support, not only to let me know that's okay, but for you to actually join and helping me address this. I think there's a new phrase now called, I don't need an ally, I need a co-spirator, someone that can do the work with me to push for equality, equity, and justice in so many areas. So it is about support. You have to care in order to actually do this. And it does take a united consciousness to move forward. The thing is, all of us have different perspectives on how to get things done, right? That's always going to be in the picture. But it's understanding and realizing, okay, we know that we're united on this. How can we still move forward despite some of our differences on how to address this issue? And you'll see that, in your perspective, things that you're going to school for, it plays in any role. Even though I'm a state rep, I can tell you that as a social worker, I still saw it on the job where there were colleagues of mine that weren't as culturally competent, especially when it came to working with individuals in the justice system, mind you, which tend to be majority Black individuals, Latinx individuals, people of color, and people from different low-income communities. So you truly have to be aware of how each concern or issue impacts everyone's lives differently. So with all that being said, in the current work that I do, it's not only speaking out what's wrong, right? So I work with individuals that, everyone has a different opinion. That doesn't mean I don't think they're wrong, but I realize the reality of the space that I'm in. So as a Black woman that's advocating not only for my district, but quite honestly, the state, and realizing that I owe it to people that have come before me, that have advocated for women's rights, for equality rights, that how can I move in order to get this passed in legislation? So in that way, it improves the lives of people that have helped me get to where I am. And so moving forward for you all, I encourage you all in your own journey to, one, embrace it. I tell people all the time, you can't find your voice until you embrace all the parts of your life. Realizing and accepting that coming from a divorced home didn't mean a barrier. In fact, it actually helped me understand a lot of what could be addressed to being a first generation student and just truly caring about the community, that it takes embracing who you are, supporting others, and honestly, it's about being selfless. It's about being a servant. It's about seeing how can I help improve this person's life better, even if I may not get credit. Because if that's truly the intention of where your heart is, it will come in many more ways than one. And I've seen that happen not only in the justice system, but because of my tenacity for working in that space, opened other doors that I never thought I would see. And I'm living it today. So with that being said, I encourage you all to truly not only support each other, especially as students. Obviously COVID and technology, this is sort of weird, right? It's a new weird platform for all of us. You guys are truly going to be each other's rock if we want to move forward. It does take all of us to stay united. And you guys already have the groundwork for what it means to be not only a community, but community advocate. So I encourage you all to keep doing what you believe in. And with that, Jadalyn, I guess I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dora. So I'll actually turn it over to Dia. We have some questions, and then we'll open it up to attendees as well to ask any questions they may have.
Thank you, Jalen. Thank you so much, Dora, by the way. This This is great. I like learning so much, especially about my community. Since I've been in Marquette, I've definitely learned more about my community. I've
Mm.
gone away for school, so this is very helpful just to learn more about what's going on in Milwaukee. So my first question that I came up with was, what was the process of the journey like as you were campaigning to be an elected official?
Oh, I laugh because it was difficult. There are many nights that I cried, and it's because you're constantly. The hardest part for me campaigning was honestly being truly vulnerable to the public. So personally, I like the one-on-one conversations or the small groups like today, right? That where I can actually share who I am, some of my experiences, and actually hear from you all or the individual I'm speaking with. And personally, I don't need the accolades, right? So being a first-time candidate, I knew that I would have to not only one be in a public space, and if this were to happen, that this is a new adjustment that will now be a part of my life for a very long time. Uh, but another part of it was, we talk about messaging and campaigning, right? So, because obviously this is the message you're going to be sharing over and over to individuals that you're trying to say, hey, I hope I can earn your trust or in your vote. And I personally need to, one, maintain my integrity and remain authentic. So in order for me to do that, I had to share what I truly believed, not only from what I've seen in my own life, but from my work and how to communicate with other people. And that meant sharing my personal story. So that was probably the biggest hurdle with campaigning that was difficult. It was truly getting over myself and my pride and being concerned about how other people thought and focusing on, I'm just the person head, so to speak, that's carrying out a vision of how to improve the community, the district, and the state. So I would say that was the most difficult thing. The second thing was honestly having a tenacity to do it day in and day out because we had to do doors and COVID usually, obviously go door to door. And I knew different districts are different, but I know in Milwaukee, in the district, in order to earn your vote, I had to come to your door, and just to some extent. Now I've obviously made sure I was safe. I made masks. I was the only one that was primarily doing it. Anyone that wanted to help, I didn't have them help if they were uncomfortable because obviously safety is a priority. And the reception was not only surprisingly amazing, they're like, "We're so glad you came to our door because we have concerns," but also it was dealing with the naysayers. So there in any space, not just campaigning, but in any work that you do, especially the higher you want to improve yourself, there will always be someone that don't want to see you succeed. Like that's just the nature of the game. When you want to improve, there's going to be someone or something that's going to prevent you from moving forward, whether it's you, other people, or life in general. And so part of that was blocking out the negative, messages I was hearing from either individuals, from myself, wondering if I was even good enough to be in this position, what could I have to offer. And I mean, fundraising's never fun. It just isn't. But it really boils down to, again, getting over me and reminding myself of why I was doing this. My why wasn't for me personally. It was to improve the lives of people that I care about. But once I got over that, then it's easy to block out things that distract you if you're focused on what your purpose is. So I would say that was the hardest thing campaigning. Um, and that's just, that notion can be applied to any type of line of work. But if you're interested in politics, you have to have some tough skin, but there are people that will support you. You just got to find the right group that will.
Thank you. And I definitely resonated with the pride and vulnerability part. I
Yeah.
feel like it's just hard sometimes to make yourself, vulnerable to other people, especially when you don't know them. So I really respect you for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, so my next question is like, what did you learn? Or like, what specific lessons did you learn from EOP or from Marquette in general that like have like influenced your career as a social worker and as an elected official?
That is a good question. I think the biggest thing is to be open to ask for help. Like I said, being in EOP, I was like I mentioned, I was nervous about opening up. Just because I wasn't sure. Hey, you really gonna come through? I sort of have to get this done. But the biggest thing was definitely asking for help, and especially in this space, campaigning, you have to ask for help because this job is so much bigger than one person. So that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned as an EOP student. The other one is truly understanding the power of network. So that was something that I understood, but it didn't really come into fruition until like maybe a couple of years later when different doors were opening up. I was meeting these different people. I'm like, is it really about the connections? A big part of it is your skill set. Let me just put that out there. But another big part of it is connections, especially in Milwaukee and just Wisconsin. So this time that you guys all have with each other, I encourage you all to definitely stay more connected than I personally have. That's something I do wish I could have done better, staying connected with individuals. And, life happens, right? You guys either move to different opportunities, you get caught up in life, maybe a relationship happens, something happens at the job or something family. So it's difficult to keep up with people. But they truly, you want to hold your network close. And that's something that I would encourage you all to do. It's something that I could have definitely done better.
Thank you. I'm sitting here taking notes like network. So I know you mentioned earlier, like if you wanted to go into politics, you have a tough skin. But like, what advice would you give people that want to go in social work also, and politics?
Yeah. So in social work, what you learn, at least at Marquette, I don't know if they've changed the curriculum. There might be a couple of tweaks here and there, but a big part of it is understanding that you personally can't have your own perspective. You can't make someone change by telling them over and over and over again that this is what you should do and hoping that they'll do it. One, that's not the case because not everyone believes the same thing you do. Not everyone will have the same journey as you did. So with social work, and social work for injustice, you learn a lot about, obviously how policies operate. You sort of learn like statistics on how to read data and just different policies, whether it's focused on domestic violence or criminal justice or of that nature. And you also take a lot of sociology classes too. You may do that to understand like how society operates, right? So with that major, you truly can go many routes, which is one of the great things about that major. For me, it didn't help because I wanted to know exactly what my path was, which obviously caused me sort of fumble here and there. But initially, I wanted to go into nursing because I saw my mom be a nurse. So I was like, well, I know I'm caring. I know I want to make sure people get better. So I was like, let me try nursing. Didn't get into the school. So I was like, okay, I'll take maybe a couple classes here and there to sort of figure out what that looks like. And stumbling on social work for injustice, you get to learn. That's where I learned about the different disparities that Black women deal with day in and day out, especially in Milwaukee, which is something I didn't even know. And I told myself, how could I miss this? And I lived here all my life. So in that space, you can take it anywhere. You can take it for social. You can take it to do your master's. You can go into social work like I did. A lot of people don't know this, but if you are interested in other careers like medical or law school, like they're looking for a variety of different individuals that have a background, because even though social welfare and justice, you think of it, you think, okay, your focus maybe just go to social work. Do you know how many interactions within healthcare system alone, just between the doctor and the patient, have so many disparities in and of itself? Whether a patient reported that they're in pain, but not being taken seriously because of their race, their gender, their sexual orientation. Or if we're going to law school, understanding how the way the law is written and dictated can either push for equity or push for discrimination. And so the things you learn in social welfare and justice truly can be applied to different aspects of life. But my journey into social work, I was just trying to find a job that allowed me to work with people and to advocate for them. So after applying, I think maybe for a couple of months, I landed with a job at Justice Point, where I was a pretrial case manager for 2 years. So in that role, I would have to write reports to the court about people's compliance with their court orders, how many appointments did they keep, were their drug tests, up to par, this, that, and the other, but also reporting if, they had employment or if they started IOTA treatment, because obviously the courts are focused on just, the nature of the case itself, but there's so many things that happen behind the courts where people may not know what that is. And so we would do referrals to different agencies, whether it's mental health, IOTA, employment, healthcare, to sort of help them get into that. And that job was rewarding, but very taxing emotionally, because you remember the stories of people that you work with. There's this term called vicarious trauma. For those that know, it's pretty much living somewhat the effects of trauma through another individual. And because I was, I guess, pretty good at my job, they would give me the harder clients that had a lot more concerns that they had to work through. And I got to the point where I mentally couldn't handle being in that space. And you never want to get into a space where you are, what's the word? You become and get jaded in the work that you do, if you think that change is even possible. Because once you get to that mental space, it's hard for, one, you're not taking care of yourself, and you can't really do much for anyone else. So in that space, don't get me wrong, it's still very rewarding, but you have to be aware and accept that there's always going to be change that has to be addressed. And oftentimes it gets frustrating when you see individuals that just left and they come back into the program. You're like, come on, like, we worked through this, right? But you work with people, and people are predictably unpredictable, right? Because all of us have our own stories, our own traumas, and our own background. And it takes someone to not only obviously check them when they need to be checked, but do it in a way where it still allows them to have a chance to redeem themselves. So social work, I'd say, is definitely rewarding, but it's not for the faint of heart. And addressing and putting you first is something that I had to learn the hard way. So if anyone interested in social work, I wouldn't say don't run away from it, because it is very rewarding, but you have to take care of yourself first. And I wish I learned that sooner rather than later, because I had a longer path to get myself back to where I need to be mentally.
Thank you, Sarah, for taking notes. Well, my final question is: so, what's next? How far do you want to advance in your political career? Where do you see yourself going?
And every time I'm asked that question, I don't know how to answer. And the reason why I don't know how to answer, guys, is this is something I've never, ever dreamed that could happen. If I'm just being honest, being from Milwaukee, first generation student, coming from a divorced home and things weren't always right? I just was like, I'm just cool if I got a job. I was like, I can be a nurse, just work, marry, have a family, have kids, cool, right? And it's funny how life will sort of just take you into these spaces. And you're just like, are you sure I can do this? So, it's the same way when I was asked to be a campaign manager. I was actually trying to go to law school because I wanted to advocate for people. Didn't get into the law school I wanted to get into, and an opportunity to be a campaign manager opened up. I'm like, wow. Just so you know, I'm so not qualified for this, but it opened the door to other individuals and legislatures that were doing the work, and the current previous individual that represented the 11th district was big on financial literacy. So he and I, connected there, And now being in this space, for me, again, it's not really about the accolades. It's about what can be done. Now, I still want to go to law school, one, because I think it's important that you always continue your education if you're able to, in any capacity, whether that's higher education, getting a certification, in any trade, or starting a business. Like, all of that's important, because I think all of us should strive to do our absolute best. But I also know there's a need for Black women to be judges in the courtroom. A lot of what happens in the courtroom, obviously you have attorneys that try to advocate for one or the other, and they're simply just creating a story to see who they can convince most. But it's the judge that truly makes the decision at that moment. So that's something I know is a need, just around not only in our state, but everywhere. So judge is something I've considered. Politically, I honestly couldn't tell you. I know there are thoughts about Senate or, higher offices, whether it's national or more local. But I can tell you this, that for me, is whenever the time is right, one, and two, I want to make sure that there's work behind my name, because you'll see individuals that, and it's not just, again, in politics, it's in any space where you have individuals that carry that title, but when you ask them, what did you get done? They can't show anything for it. And so I want to make sure that as a leader and an advocate, that not only am I giving back in some capacity, but that I'm leaving something behind, whether it's for the community, the district, or people that, help me get to where I am.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to open up the questions to everyone that's here. They can either put them in the chat, or Jada Lynn, can you unmute them? I don't know how that works.
They are unmuted, so feel free to unmute yourselves. You can turn on your camera if you'd like.
Yeah, so let's raise our hand, then first come, first serve type thing. Let me look to see whose hands are raised. 1 second.
It looks like Dante McFadden had his hand raised first.
All right. You go, Dante.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Assemblywoman Drake. Thank you for for making time to speak with us this evening. And first question I had, the only question I have for you is, at this point in time, that you've been in office, have there been any people that you have come to see as unlikely allies in the state legislature?
Short answer is yes. And when we, I don't want to address this. So short answer is yes. Because you're working with people that, one, represent different districts throughout the state, and some of those districts are not as open, to say the least, when it comes to being allies. And so when we talk about understanding what our allies are, it's not only who's going to be advocating the best for you, but who also is about the work. Because with being a legislature, it's two parts, right? It's not only about addressing what's wrong, but it's also finding a way to get it done. And so with allies, there are allies and co-conspirators, but there are definitely those that aren't as well.
Thank you. I asked because I know some people who have been elected officials or are currently elected officials who had similar experiences.
Yeah, and it's weird, is because as a legislature, you're also put onto different committees, right? So I'm on like workforce, this and the other, obviously addressing like criminal justice, what it means to have equitable access, whether it's the economy, tech now is a big thing, justice, that's then the other. And again, since we are public representatives, right, that also means we have, individuals that share their concerns and experiences. And there are many times, there are times where you hear what people are saying, but you understand the undertones of where they're coming from, and that's hard to navigate. It's because at times, obviously, you can easily respond to anything right then and there, right? But the goal, again, what's the goal? Is the goal to cause noise, or is it to get something passed that can help an individual in a community? So being in that space as a Black woman can be challenging at times.
No doubt. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Dante. Roy is up.
Hey Dora, a longtime fan since the CIA was it
Right.
CIE, I think it was called back in the day.
That was called CIE.
CIE.
And then it was MCC prior to that.
Yep, MCC. Yep, and now it's not
CEI.
there you go.
Yep. This had a
I was
history, folks.
I was wondering if you could walk us through what your work week or what your day to day looks like in your position.
Yeah, so it changes every day. Let me say that. So usually for work as the legislature, Tuesdays through Thursdays, I'm typically in the Capitol, as you see, spending the night because I have a session first thing in the morning. But what happens is, obviously, if the building was open, there would be lobbyists, which aren't no more than, honestly, organizers that go directly to the legislatures in person to have meetings. That's all pretty much registered lobbyists are, that come in and out of the building. But due to COVID, I'm obviously having meeting requests to learn like what their concerns are, sort of see what they're pushing for to understand where I'm coming from and what my priorities are. So it's having meetings with lobbyists. It's with session, there's different days there's a proposed calendar that will go through the whole session period, which is 2 years in the assembly. And so we usually get word when we have to be in the larger floor, so to speak, with all the legislatures. But then in between those session days, there are committee meetings. And those are the ones that you're assigned to based on, one, what you're interested in and what they think you would be good on. So for me, like I said, I'm passionate about not only what happens with families, but criminal justice and the economy and making sure people have access to not only good paying jobs, but, just what equity looks like, economic wealth, right? So I do on the workforce, the criminal justice, public safety, government oversight, and family law. So we would hear whenever the chairs of those committees reach out to us, they let us know what those meetings are. And in those meetings, you have public hearings. So that's when people from the public, whether it's organizations, whether it's you that may have a testimony, come and share why you're in support or non-support of a bill that's being proposed. You have executive committee hearings where we as a committee vote on it, and it will be transferred either to the floor for the whole Assembly and Senate to vote on, and then go to the governor, and then the governor chooses if he wants to sign the bill or not. And then it's still reaching out to the community, right? So obviously, it's important that the issues we face, a budget is your moral document of what your priorities are. And so another part of my job is making sure that I not only respond to constituents, which is probably the biggest part. So I have a team that helps me respond to constituents and their concerns, whether it's a piece of legislation that's being discussed or issues that they just see in the community, and then finding different ways to reach out and let them know, hey, this is what's happening. So they're called legislative doors, where I go to doors in the community and I say, hey, I'm state rep. I'm not here for your vote, but I want to come to you because I want to know your feedback and concerns because I know I'm representing you. And obviously your voice matters to me. And then in that every office is different on how you can plan for outreach. So that could be radio interviews, that could be town halls, well, virtual now. That can be, when everything gets safe again, parades or different community events, or, anything that would be outreach or calling individuals saying, hey, I have this concern. And so is part outreach to my district, letting them know, one, what's happening, letting them know that I hear from you and I do care and I research into it, and then a lot of meetings. And then if you have time, well, not even if you have time, if when you make time, it's also reading on things that you're interested in. So it's researching about what policies are being done across the nation, what's been able to be accomplished in areas, what's something that I foresee can be an issue, and how can I look at that and then see which other legislatures would be interested in assigning on to help push this forward. So all that to say, every day is different, and it truly is up to the person that's elected to determine how their day is. And that's how you can get representatives that either do a lot of work or representatives that don't do much, which is unfortunate. But there are representatives that definitely work hard to serve their community and their district. And for me, like I said, I know my position and title obviously has some power to it, but the power truly is with the people that elected me. So that's honestly, I guess, the day-to-day or week-to-week event that looks like being a legislature, and it always changes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Rochelle first, and then Sonia, and then Dr. Lewis.
Hi. Thank you so much, Dora, for being here and
Oh,
for sharing your amazing story. I was really intrigued by your talk of the power of the network and that connections matter. Can you talk a little bit about what your network was like as a student? Who was included in the network and how that has evolved for you as you have evolved as a Black woman in politics?
definitely. So for me, I'm not gonna lie, I was the student that just sort of wanted to say where the Black people were and the people of color, because that's where I was most comfortable, right, as a student. And in that space, it grew the more I wanted to find ways to push things forward from the administrative side of things. So I intentionally reached out to different faculty members that were in positions that could address some things that students were advocating for. And it was simply an email saying, "Hi, my name is Dora Drake. I'm a student, and this is what I'm concerned with. Can I meet with you?" So it was that, in addition to actually running for student government, which I did not see happening, that I won and I actually did for academic senator, but I had to forfeit it because I had to go part-time just to finish school. But that running for something that, again, wasn't comfortable for me, right? It wasn't my comfort zone, but I saw it as another way of advocacy to meet with other people that could push things forward, allowed me to broaden my network. So I'm still cool with several faculty members at Marquette, within not only at EOP, but other departments. And I truly relied on not only their recommendation letters, right? If you're applying for, or professional references, I should say, when looking for work, but I was sort of just grabbing what I could find. I was looking for opportunities where I knew I'd be passionate about and that aligned with my beliefs and values, and that again, you gotta make sure you live right. So a job that can pay the bills. And there was a job that I did not follow through, or a job offer, I should say, interview that I didn't follow through with because I knew that I would want to go to law school someday. And during the interview, before we closed out, this person told me that, "Oh, you'll realize that law school is not even that important. It's about just organizing because law school isn't anything." So I already knew that if going to law school was something that I personally wanted to achieve and do, and saw it as another tool to better my community, I couldn't work in an environment where, that wasn't going to be accepted. So, my line of work, whether it's in the justice system or campaigning, it was getting cool with my colleagues and my coworkers, right? So you get to know your coworkers, and there's always this, you have like your friends, and then you have your work friends they tell everything to, but not only about work stuff. That's a real thing. But I still stay in touch with some of them. And these were individuals that I not only got close to, but, I was comfortable calling after work because we shared more about, what we were dealing with at home or ways we can support each other. And that, again, I was tired of what I was doing, not because I didn't love it, because I personally couldn't handle it mentally, or I just started reaching out. And so actually a friend of mine from Marquette, I think he's going to kill me now that he's an EO, if he's not EOP or not. Nick Truog, I think his sister is an EOP. I'm not trying to call you out if you're on the call, but he actually reached out because he's in politics. So he asked me to come for a press conference for Tammy Baldwin to help out. And personally, I didn't want people knowing I was still in town because people thought I left. And I was like, it's a friend. I'll come help out. And that's honestly where I met Shyla Deacon, who asked me to be my campaign manager. And so because of that campaign and working with her, like that's how my network truly grew in ways I didn't even see or imagine. It didn't happen right away though. So obviously, like you asked, like where are the opportunities? How can I move forward? And it took me at least maybe 2 months, 3 months before I settled on a job. But then people I was connected to now were not only people in the community, but legislatures and people that were CEOs of nonprofits and organizations. So as my network grew even larger, then people suggested, hey, this program might be good for you. And I didn't mention this. I went to Emerge Wisconsin. Well, I'm a graduate of Emerge Wisconsin, which is an organization that encourages and trains women who are interested in running for office for democratic values. And they're like, we think you'd be a great fit. So I went, and again, my network brought it now to statewide because now I got to meet so many incredible women who, in their own perspective, communities and line of work, are advocating for what's best, not only just for women, but, equity in different parts of the state. And so as your network grows, again, it is difficult to stay in contact with the people that you start off with. But when I campaigned, I reached out to everyone I had access to or had their phone number. So I reached out back to faculty that I knew at Marquette. I reached out to individuals that I knew from school and from work saying, hey, I love your help. This isn't about me. It truly is about what I'm trying to do for the district. And it only grows from there. So long story short, as you go through EOP as a student and as you develop your professional career path and just honestly your journey, don't forget the people that you're connected to. In some way, shape, or form, we can stay attached, whether it's social media or if it's the email or it's a phone call, do that. And as students, I encourage you all to make as many connections as possible, whether that's developing a mentorship, whether a faculty or professor, reaching out to an admin about, hey, I'm a student and I'm concerned about this, or I'm really interested in, politics, but I don't know where to go from there. Like that's where the network truly begins, because now you're opening the door and it allows people to know, oh, you're interested in that. So then when they hear an opportunity, they'll remember, oh, right, such and such was interested in this. Let me see if they're interested in that. And that's how your network really helps you not only get to where you want to be, but truly create that united front in a way where it brings in so many different people and coalitions together.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Dora. Thank you for being here. I've learned a lot so far, so I appreciate everything you're sharing. One question I had for you is, it sounds like you were an activist in undergrad and, you continued that through the work that you're doing. But if you think back to your time in undergrad, knowing what you know now, are there any other strategies you would use as an activist at Marquette that you didn't necessarily know at the time or didn't use at the time?
That is a good question. I think as a student activist, the one thing I would have done more is done more outreach to other community members. So, and I say that to not to say that there wasn't outreach to different people or different students in like different schools. Because I know some of us were talking with some of the students at MATC and UWM, but there are community leaders that truly are other activists that do this work honestly for a living. And so, as an activist, student activist, the one thing I would have done more was definitely trying to see who to talk to in the community. And I, as a student, that's maybe a little bit more difficult, especially if you're just getting into, excuse me, like activism. So in order to do that, a lot of it is promoting it on social media. That's something that I know was done quite a bit, whether it's just on Facebook. But you know, what are other avenues? You can do an op-ed. I know that I think Marquette has Marquette Wire. I don't know if they still have it, but you know, there are students that were reporting on stories, and so any tool that can help get your message out as well as what you're pushing for and bring awareness, use it. So whether that's social media, whether that's doing interviews, and looking and researching into who's doing the work in the community now that are you know, leaders, but you guys are the emerging leaders, right? Finding ways to connect with them. That's something that I think I could have done better as a student activist.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Dr. Lewis, you're up.
Ooh, evening, Representative Drake. How are you? What an honor.
I'm good, Dr. Lewis. How are you?
Doing all right. I got my second COVID shot, so I feel
good.
encouraged. I want to wish you happy Women's Month.
Thank you.
Yes, and just seeing you makes all the work that we do just seem, I mean, just so much worth it. It's fabulous. But I wonder this, how do you believe that students who are attending this liberal arts college can expand their own concepts of community? I mean, especially in light of the alleged worst and lowest various categories that supposedly characterize Milwaukee and Wisconsin. How do you think they can use this opportunity?
So my thing is, the only way to go is up, right? So it's easy to get bogged down by all the issues we truly face, whether it's the lowest rate of incarceration among Black men, to just what we've seen with domestic and gun violence in our own community, to education. And that's not even to immigration rights. That doesn't even touch what we've all personally dealt with. Because I recognize that not all of us, one, have the same story. And some of us got some, you know, trials that we're either going through or overcoming. This concept of addressing and coming together truly means to look at it for what it is, but to realize that there is always work to be done, and that's okay. Is because this work has been pushed and advocated for and fought for many years in different ways, not just in Milwaukee, but our nation. You have Ida B. Wells, you have MLK, you have Malcolm X, you have Marsha Johnson, so many people that have dedicated their lives to this work. And I say this to say that you all should be encouraged, that it takes one, there's always going to be work that needs to be done. But the concept of getting work done doesn't necessarily mean that if it doesn't get eradicated, if you don't help eradicate it by the time you're dead, that you failed. Not at all. The thing is a process, and it's always going to be there, and there's always work to be done. With that being said, and with so many things that are against us, one, finding things that are improving is because that will not only keep your spirits encouraged, but it reminds you to keep going. And two, to find ways on where you fit in. And I say that to say that, when there are issues, like, there are times where, like, I want to help, I don't know how to. A lot of the times, the things that you personally deal with in your own life, in your own trials, in your own stories, you can be the only person that can actually advocate for that, or truly advocate for it in a way to help someone understand why this is an issue, right? So for me, like, I know immigration rights is an issue, with no doubt, but I personally haven't lived it. So I'm gonna have to rely on someone that has gone through it or has seen it witnessed, where they can truly speak to why this is an issue, which is why I need to depend on them even more, And for me, understanding the need of, supporting not only just Black women, but what it means for families, and especially Black fathers. Again, I'm not a Black father, but I know so many Black fathers that can help me articulate why this is an issue. And so when we move forward in addressing what concept of helping people, just advocacy looks like, especially in Milwaukee, one, find the good things that are happening, because they are. Do your own research about what's currently being done, and then find your lane and how you can push it forward.
Ooh, thank you. I'm going to conclude by saying, I guess you mean stay in the game.
Yes, stay in the game. Stay in the
All
game.
right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, for that question. I think we are at time, and that's a great question to end on. And I want to thank you, Dora, so much for giving your time to speak with us all today and listen to your journey. And I want to thank Dia and the CEI for collaborating, and all of you for attending today. I know today was nice, so I appreciate y'all for being here. And I want to say that the next and final EOP Spotlight for spring 2021 will be on Wednesday, April 14th, and we'll be featuring Gadira Yesh in honor of Asian Pacific Islander Desi American Heritage Month. Gadira is actually depicted in the mural, Our Roots Say We're Sisters. So we're really excited to get another great speaker coming. So thank you again, Dora, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you
so much, Dora.
No, thank you all. Doing this stuff reminds me of why I'm doing this, and it's always great to come back and not only talk to EOP fam and other students, but you guys know that your journey doesn't stop at college. It truly is just the beginning, and if you hold on to that, you will be surprised at where life takes you in a very good way.
And where can people follow you and support you, Dora? I did drop in your website.
Yes, so I do have two separate accounts, because campaign and state affairs can't mix. But if you want to know what's happening on the campaign trail, I think Jalen posted, it's Dora Drake for FORWI.com. That's the website. But if you search in Facebook, Dora.
Yeah.
Based on that reaction, I think her laptop might have died.
Oh,
yeah, I think so.
I can also, I have her campaign on Instagram, so I will also drop that in the chat.
Yes, and we'll follow up with an email with the recording as well. So on that note, thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thanks for coming.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.